Welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the old world. I hope you're all doing well, and today, my friends, we're back with a showdown between the Greenskins and the Dawi. It's going to be Grom the Paunch facing off against Thorgrim Ironbrow, taking us back to Warhammer 2 a little bit with this matchup. Very, very common back in the day. And it's going to be the Royal Dawi Airforce versus a bunch of squigs. Should be fun. So for the build here of the Greenskins here on the Bleakspire Labor Camp, it is going to be Goblins in the front, Orc Boys in the secondary, so just chaff units to basically get annihilated. And the real damage dealers in the Greenskin army are the squigs. And squigs in general, squig herds, squig hoppers, are some of the best units on the roster. Squigs, of course, do have the immune to psychology, so they're very sticky to get rid of in a bunch of different matchups, and just honestly a really, really good damage profile for what you're paying. 33 weapon strength, great armor piercing, pretty good mobility, and of course, very, very cheap as well. So, Grom the Paunch, I'm a big fan of him against Dwarves. I think there's a couple options. WAAAGH is great. He buffs your entire army. Pretty elusive on his hog, has decent armor piercing himself, but I really like the sustainability of Grom the Paunch, how difficult he is to remove, and he can really be quite a presence on like side objectives where the Dwarves might be struggling to kind of get those points. Yeah, squigs and Orc Boys. Now, for the Dawi and the glorious platypus here, it is going to be gyrocopters backed up by brimstone guns and brimstone guns. The rest of the army here is going to be Dwarf Warriors, and it looks like Quarrelers in the back. Very, very standard stuff. And you really do need Slayers in this matchup as well. I would imagine that in reserve, he probably has a bunch of Slayers, because it's one of the only ways that you can efficiently deal with the squig spam. Squigs just like outtrade so much of your army, and they're actually very difficult to shoot down with like missiles. They kind of like have this like weird low center of gravity where it become very tough to finish them off. Now, I do like the gyrocopters. Greenskins don't have a lot of efficient ways of dealing with gyrocopters. Here in the front, you can see the goblins are being toasted by the steam cannon. So steam cannons are pretty cool. They do really good damage against light armor, so obviously Greenskins have a lot of that. You can use them to shoot into squig herds, which only have 50 armor themselves, so they can get punished a little bit. And up on the high ground, there are going to be some Orc Boys grabbing this objective, as well as Grom the Paunch, making sure that no dwarves with blasting charges are going to be creeping up there. But so far, Platypus getting some good damage here. However, the Greenskins have Rusty Arrows, they do also have Orc Arrow Boys, and they are able to get some good DACA back on that gyrocopter. They don't actually kill any models, but it is going to be forcing the opponent here to move about and not be able to just kind of sit and shoot freely. So we will see how he micros that. Now, right here, we do have Goblins moving up, and Orc Boys and Squig Herds getting ready to party. Objectives will be opening up in about 30 seconds right here, and on the far side, we do have a Night Goblin Shaman, so Itching Nuisance, Night Shroud, as well as Sneaky Stabbing. Okay, so interesting kit. Wonder what we'll be seeing with the Night Shroud. Like, is he going to be sneaking up some Black Orcs or something like that? That would be super cool to get some Black Orcs up close. Or some Squigs. You could actually make some Squigs invisible and sneak them into the back line and really, really get into the Dwarven missiles. Now, objective's going to be opening up in about 10 seconds. Yep, looks like that is the case. Night Goblin Squig Hopper is going to be screaming over the high ground, so these little guys are going to be hopping over the hill, looking to get into the Dwarven backfield, as we do see the blasting charges coming out. And if you guys are aspiring Dwarf players, you really do want to have blasting charges as a, not your frontline unit, but as your secondary unit or reserve piece. Typically the Vanguard deployment. If you have them right in the front, many people will adjust to that and be able to kind of shut them down with mass. But if you bring them in behind your secondary troops, and, you know, once you really know the lay of the battlefield, that's when they really shine, because your opponent doesn't have as much time to kind of react to their positioning. So, Objective 3, going to the Dwarves. Objective 2, going to the Greenskins. It is going to be a 2-to-1 cap for the Greenskins right now, as the gyrocopters are certainly getting hammered a little bit. These ones actually in some serious danger. We do see their armor sundered. Somehow you're able to kind of poison a gyrocopter. Granted, I could see one of the loose arrows like hitting the pilot and applying poison, and really, really good usage of mass here. So on the side, we do see the Squig Hoppers moving in here. Degraduns is here, one of the buffs from Grom the Paunch. Going to be giving them some good stats, but the blasting charges of the Dwarves going to be saturating into them, and he is able to get that in range. But the other blasting charge is also going to be shut down, so very, very good Squig usage, and their leadership does hold on. But in the backfield, it looks like there are going to be more gyrocopter brimstone guns coming in to break them. So the blasting charges of Platypus here still getting good value, able to hit the squigs on the approach and these Orc Boys. So despite being shut down, they still have decent ammo here on this back unit, and these guys were able to get a nice salvo off. But the WAAAGH is going to be sounding the horn one more time in the deep as they do move up. We see Squig Herds and Squig Herds. Looks like they're going to be piling into the Dwarf Warriors right here and getting ready to butter some bread. But obviously, Goblins going to get massacred. I mean, basic Dwarf Warriors might as well be chosen against Goblins. Goblins have very little armor piercing, and I've always struggled against Dwarves. Even Night Goblins do, right? So, but the Greenskins are going to be swinging the objective. Looks like Platypus doesn't have quite as many Dawi bodies on the point, and the objective is flipping very, very quickly to the WAAAGH. And this is like the ideal frontline comp, like some terrible chaff unit absorbing the damage and having the Squig Herd stacked on top of them that will heavily, heavily outtrade most Dwarven positions. So down on the low ground, we do see the Goblins holding back the Dawi for now. But Platypus is doing a good job kind of fending off the Squig Rush on this side. Looks like the gyrocopters with their overwatch are doing some pretty good work, but more and more squig herds surging in from all directions. Up on the high ground, we see more squigs coming, so pretty much every squig summon is coming up and over the high ground and just collapsing down to the dwarven position. As far as value trading goes, it looks like Platypus is up a little bit right now. This objective, very nice by Platy there. He was able to kind of hold on to this point, but the WAAAGH is down now, so that's really going to kind of kick the damage of the Greenskins into overdrive, as these squigs and pigs, my favorite barbecue joint, is going to be able to kind of continue moving through these forces. Thoric Ironbrow, though, he has a WAAAGH of his own, and the Rune of Doom has popped as well, so the entire Dwarven army has their own WAAAGH. Makes them cause fear, which is so incredibly good against the Greenskins, who of course have very low leadership values on many of their units. Durkid Squigs charging into Dwarf Warriors. The Daka line here doing very good. It looks like the Greenskins are having a pretty dominant fight on this side, really buckling back the Dwarven position, getting very cost-effective engagements with the Durkid Squig Hoppers. And one thing that's pretty wild is we're not seeing Slayers. Rather than seeing Slayers, we're actually seeing the Gyrocopters come in, which isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they're certainly doing a decent job, but I really do feel like Slayers are better for getting the momentum back, and they also have capture weight. But again, that's just my opinion. So Thoric Ironbrow still fighting here. Will the dwarves be able to hold on to this point? It looks like it. They do have the Dwarf Warriors in reserve. Should be able to kind of push them back, and several Quarreler units are still getting some nice Daka into the side of the Goblins, but Grom the Paunch giving a little bit of a leadership buff. Going to be surging into the backfield and looking to shut down the blasting charges before they can reach the front line of the Greenskins. Miners battling the Rusty Airs. Rusty Airs don't have terrible combat stats. I mean, they might be able to hold them off, actually. But all it's going to be taking is a single unit of Squigs. Greenskin's very comfortable up on the high ground objective. Current score is going to be 381 to 190. So a little bit of a lead for the Greenskins, but, you know, it can kind of creep up on you, and they're even value trading. I mean, all the Greenskins really need to do right now is keep the even value trading, and they're going to just get further and further ahead of the Dwarves, as we do see more Squigs shutting down these missile pieces. And that's what's so good about Squigs. If your opponent doesn't have Slayers, you can kind of just throw them into Dwarven missiles, and they're going to be able to trade upwards into like any sort of Dwarven units that might attack them. Yes, they have low armor and low melee defense, but their damage output with their bonus force infantry and their poison is very, very good indeed. Thoric attacking them as well, so he's going to be hitting them pretty hard. Looks like this objective firmly in the control of the Greenskins, as on the other side, we see a lot of routing Greenskin units, so certainly some housekeeping needs to be done. All these Orc Era boys, as well as the basic Chaff boys, the Orc boys there, the Chaff boys, might as well call them that. But they need to be sent back to the shadows for sure to get that resurgence. Looks like there's going to be some Orc Boar boys. For a second, I thought it was going to be the Savage Orc Boar boy biggins that did get a cost reduction recently. Now we start to see Slayers coming out. So Slayers really, really going to be giving Platypus a lot of momentum to maybe push back into this game, as we see the Dwarven infantry start to rally this way. So we do see more Dwarves and more Dwarves. And the Slayer's going to be jumping on top of your boy Grom. That's not like, he has 100 armor, which is insane. You look at some other characters that are just like fully, you know, covered in like plate, and they have like 60 armor, and then Grom the Paunch just like a naked belly, just like 100 armor is pretty hilarious. But he does take out a couple Slayers. Well, it looks like there's going to be a resurgence from the Dawi. Very, very nice play. Going to be getting a double cap, and it's certainly the point where the Dwarves could win on 2 points here. So Dwarf Warriors fighting its AP Kaloonies should be a winning fight for them. A lot of round units need to be unsummoned. Yeah, that really, really can become a problem with these like low leadership swarming factions. If you don't effectively unsummon your units, sometimes you can fall really far behind here. So Spider Riders into Blasting Charges. Blasting Charges have terrible combat stats, should be okay here. Sneaky Stabbing going down, making these Orc War Boys into actually feasible cav units. 46 melee attack, and you know, they're actually very good cav units even without buffs, but the Rune of Doom going to be trying to counter this a little bit, but that is some good armor piercing into these dwarves. But now Platypus going into overdrive by summoning out mass Slayers. What is the response of Gaz going to be? What will he summon in to deal with the Slayer numbers? I mean, or is he just going to be split pushing on the sides? Most likely going to be trying to rush the high ground objective. So we see Squig herds moving in, looking to overwhelm the dwarves there, and oh, the heavy hitters, the big boys are here. And I really like this tech. Normally Black Orcs would be a little bit risky to kind of bring in the beginning, because obviously they're very vulnerable to mass focus fire from Thunders and or Quarrelers, depending on the situation. But now that the Dwarves don't really have a lot of missiles online, these boys are going to be extra thick and extra tough to remove. So I kind of see the angle here, getting on this objective with the Black Orcs and just being an absolute menace while using the Daka to kind of contest the middle. High ground's looking pretty safe, although the Greenskins are going to be sending their Orc Boys away, looking to maybe flank down into Platypus's Quarrelers here, which I think is a pretty good play. They do have 31 speed, a little bit faster than these Dwarf Warriors, but it looks like they're just going to be kind of colliding here, and the crumping is going to be going down. So plenty of time for both players here. We do see what appears to be some sort of a Rune of Doom from Thoric. Ooh, nice one right there. Very, very good stuff. Those AP Kaloonies get absolutely wrecked. Look at this, Gyrocopters actually being sent in is a little bit of a roadblock. I like that play. Ooh, that was cool. Obviously only 2 models, but basically he sent in some sacrificial gyrocopters, which were out of ammo and pretty much useless, to block up the Black Orcs and blob them, and then needed a little bit of a bombing run. That's actually a really, really cool tech. I like that quite a bit. You know, the big thinking here from Platy. But Gaz is inevitable. His Blackworks will make it to that objective, and the AP Loonies will fight to the bitter end while Grom the Paunch continues to just hunt targets around the battlefield. Going to be running through these dwarfs right here, cleaving a couple of those guys down. And are the Greenskins making any play for the middle? Doesn't look like it, mostly just kind of skirmishing and poking the dwarves with the mangy marauders and some of the basic rusty airs that still are here. But now the Blackworks have made it onto the point. How are they going to function? Blasting charges still will do big damage to them, but we do see the capture weight is now going for the Greenskins here, as Thorgrim Ironbrow is going to be moving across, looking to crump some of these guys and give them a little bit of a taste of their own crumping. He's a very, very good armor-piercing character. Thorg has great AP values. I mean, he is poisoned now, so obviously a little bit tricky, but in general, he's a tough one to crack. Squig herds coming from the high ground. Dwarves not really efficient at kind of responding to these type of threats, so the Squigs can easily get into the Quarrelers, and that's going to be a relatively expensive unit being lost here by the Dawi, which is certainly not something that they want. So those are some hungry Squigs as they do leap across them. Those are pretty terrifying, actually, little like mushroom goblin things, but they're basically the same size as a dwarf from the looks of things. They do hop in there, and you can see the Quarrelers just get absolutely massacred. That is going to be pretty big. That's going to take away quite a bit of momentum in the middle. And how do we see the Blackworks doing up in the high ground? They are entrenched in combat, doing a little bit of damage against Thoric. And, oh, blasting charges, man. That hurts. The 110 armor does mitigate a lot of that damage, but that still does not feel great. But the Blackworks, man, able to push off many of these units. A lot of these dwarves are in relatively dire straits. Going to be getting rear charged by the Forest Goblins, which will apply a pretty substantial leadership penalty, maybe allowing the Blackworks to win the fight. But it looks like the blasting charges and the gyrocopters just kind of wailing on them. You know, enough is enough. They got focused by quite a bit. The Greenskins resurgent here in the middle, having shut down these Quarrelers in the backfield, Spider Riders diving in to intercept reinforcements, and more Squigs causing problems, and the Slayers are being focused down by missiles, which is very, very good target priority here by Gaz. Beautiful stuff. Slayers are extremely vulnerable against missiles. It's one way to fulfill your oath quickly. You don't get blasted by those. Gyrocopters coming out in the late game. Obviously, they don't bring any capture weight to the battlefield, but they themselves will be relatively decent at sniping down some of the cav units, and the steam cannons are very, very good against the Greenskins. Good against their archer units, okay against their cavalry. They certainly know how to do it. So Quarrelers just KO'd there in the backfield, and these Squig Hoppers now going to be jumping into Slayers as well as Dwarf Warriors. They were kind of mixed together a little bit, but the Slayers will karate chop them. These guys are going to start going down very, very quickly. You can see their HP dropping rapidly as the Slayer's anti-large shines. But the WAAAGH back in business, man. And despite being down in value, it looks like he's going to be swinging the middle objective. So currently, 860 to 750. This game is so close. And this can happen to Dwarves for sure. I mean, they're pretty slow factions. So Greenskins are probably one of the best factions in the entire game at swinging between objectives and just having like super fast overloads with cheap, powerful, hard-punching units. So, you know, you see that with Greenskins versus Dark Elves. When Malekith is on the table, they just kind of avoid them and swing between objectives and try and take the ideal fights away from your opponent's power, right? I'm trying to think of a good analogy. I suppose very much like a counterpuncher, right? Like, you know, you get the big heavyweight bruiser getting in there, like the Joe Frazier, you know, and then you get, although Joe Frazier wasn't like super big, but regardless, you get what I'm saying, a hard puncher, right? And then, you know, the Greenskins kind of float like a butterfly, sting like a bee type thing, right? Which is kind of ridiculous when you look at it, but it's very, very apt, I would say. They bounce between objectives and they hit you where you're weakest, and it's very much a goblin thing, right? You know, they like to get sneaky and do their thing. Although I guess if you're playing like a Black Orc build, they're kind of just like a hard puncher. It really depends. They're a very dynamic faction. High ground objective looks like it's going to be swinging back for the Greenskins as well as the Black Orcs do make their way back onto the point. AP Galuni's trying to fight off the blasting charges here, but not quite able to get the W there. And the middle objective is being held onto by the Greenskins. I have a feeling, guys, this is going to be a razor-close game. Menacing Platypus is up in value. There is some healing in the Greenskins with Grom the Paunch, but it doesn't seem like he's taken much damage, if any. He does pop the Axe of Grom here, which is going to be giving him some pretty crazy stats, and actually takes out a couple Slayers. Now going to be searching back here, but it looks like the WAAAGH is going to be loose in the middle objective. No Dwarves trying to get up to the high ground objective, which makes sense. I think if you go for the high ground objective with any lone infantry unit, a single Squig Hopper is just going to pop out and massacre them. So with Dwarves, you typically want to be consolidating on like 2 points that are close together, so you can kind of cover both points with missile units, like park them here in the center, for example, and cover both of these angles. Now looking up here, more Squigs. They eat the blasting charges like champs, but are going to be taking down these blasting charges very, very quickly. And these are the Durkid Squigs. They're no mere Squigs. These are some pretty serious dudes. And AP Galuni's do get taken down by a combination of gyrocopters as well as these armored dwarven minor infantry. And here, looks like the Dwarves do swing the objective back, man. This is getting really, really close. Now, currently, as it stands, Platypus would win on 2 objectives. It would be relatively close, but he would win on 2 objectives. However, if Platy does potentially lose an objective again to the WAAAGH, he could be in some serious danger of straight up losing the game, just because the Greenskins do have a little bit of a decent lead here. It's almost 1100 to about 930, so it is a substantial difference, as we do have the Orc Boys fighting, surrounded. The Dwarven WAAAGH is active, the Rune of Doom, as the proud Dawi push back the foul Greenskins. A nice hammer coming down from Thorgrim there as he does drop the Hammer of Wrath on those bad boys. Up on the high ground, Squig Herds just being an absolute terror in the night, shutting down blasting charges before they're able to get their salvos off, really pinning these units in. And Grom the Paunch also coming in is going to be able to help finish them. He does have his buffs as well. He has the Grey Duns here, which is active, and then he has a constant buff, which is the Language of the Boys, which does give, melee defense to these Squigs, which is very helpful considering how pitiful their melee defense typically is. But the Dwarves holding on to 2 points. They did make an attempt for the high ground, like we said, sending some infantry up there, but intercepted very quickly by the Greenskin cav units. Looks like some Spider Riders, which take a long time to kill. They have very good melee defense for their price point at 32, so those guys really a complete nuisance to try and finish off here, really. Squigs moving to the high ground. The Squig Tide and Orc Boys in the middle. What summons do we see? Orc Air Boys. And for Platypus, the summons are going to be Dwarf Warriors, as well as Dwarf Warriors, and more Gyrocopters in the backfield to just try and get that momentum in terms of shooting down the Dwarven pressure. But the only risky variable of doing Gyrocopters instead of Slayers, I don't know how many he has at his pool, is that he is going to be losing out on capture weight pretty substantially. Like the 900 resources coming in that can't play the objectives against the Greenskins is a little bit risky. Granted, I understand the philosophy. They've been working well for him this game. He has a value lead of 13,000 to 10.9, so it has been doing well. But guys, looking a little bit suspicious up here as we do see the Squigs bouncing back and forth. Grom the Paunch interrupting quite a bit, just running over units. And it looks like Orc Air Boys have finally kind of kited these Slayers back, but look how effective the Slayers are, man. There's maybe not the most value per se. Let's see, about 700 value, not bad. They've almost paid for themselves, but just like how much effort it takes the Greenskins to deal with them. They drove these archers like back to the spawn and are just such a menace for sure. So, Squig Hoppers running over ye old miners with blasting charges. And Grom the Paunch going to be coming back down the hill. The Dwarves trying to move up, and they do have a lot of units. Slayers got their Mohawks out for the Ancestors, and they are rocked and ready to go. They are going to be moving in and chasing down these Squigs, but it looks like it's not going to be too much of an issue. And the Dwarves have a really good stranglehold, guys. Currently at 1227 to 1191. How are the Greenskins going to be able to get an objective back, man? It's going to be very tough. The Dwarves seem to have a really good stranglehold, although we look up here, like every dwarf unit is just in horrific shape. Like nobody here is healthy, so maybe the Greenskins are going to be able to get this objective back, man. Platy's going to have to send some dudes up here. He's very hunkered down in the middle. He's got some dwarf warriors, so maybe sending one of these like lone dwarves up to this objective would really make it so the Greenskins probably couldn't capture that. But here it's a little bit suspect. Grey Duns is here. Squig Hopper's great combat stats right now. We do also have these Orc Boys fighting here versus very tattered dwarves. Looks like a bombardment run's going to be coming in. That would be beautiful. Does he get it? Looks like he flies over. And Grom the Paunch is going to be going after Thorgrim as more Squigs are coming in, man. And now we got Morgrims and Magi Marauders, which of course have very good armor piercing themselves. And suddenly this objective could be swinging back. Gaz at 1275. Platypus does pass him in points though, which is going to give him a little bit of buffering. But man, oh man, losing this objective is going to be quite painful. We do see Dwarves coming in, Dwarf Warriors. Really nice rune right there. Beautiful stuff there. Dwarves do have a little bit of their own rune magic there. So Orc Boys and Night Goblins do get pounded a little bit by that, as we do see the Dwarves arriving to the objective a little bit late. Gyrocopters, of course, you can kind of see what I'm saying. Like, they of course did a little bit of decent damage, but a unit of like Slayers or something. But again, I don't know how many Slayers he did bring in the pool, so it's easy for me to say that, where he might be capped out and have like 3 on the battlefield, which totally makes sense. But in the middle, Dwarves holding on. We're going to be fighting for the high ground objective. We do get the Dwarf Warriors, so the capture weight should swing back pretty quickly, but time is running out, guys. It's getting razor close. And the Greenskins, they're really good at just dumping cheap, haggard shit on objectives, and even if they're going to be at a value deficit because of that, it's tough to remove them, man. But look at this Squigs, just absolutely monstrous against the Dawi. As now these Night Goblins going to be getting a downhill charge into the Dwarf Warriors. Capture weight on the objective. Oh, I forgot to record with the mod. I'll make sure to turn that back on for the next video. My apologies. Sometimes I just get in the zone and kind of forget about those things. But honestly, I think it's probably GG. Like, I don't know if the Dwarves are going to be able to get there quick enough. They'd probably have to go for a triple cap somehow, and these Spider Riders on the top can run interference. It's 1410 to 1368 right now, and the Dwarves do get the capture weight coming back. Oh my god, this is just such a close game. Blasting charges on their way out. Greenskins really don't have a lot left on the point, but the Dwarves, what they do have is just 1 infantry unit. Grom the Paunch has 3 capture weight. These guys have, I think, 3 or 4 apiece as well. So obviously the Dwarves do have a narrow capture weight advantage, but these infantry did finally move up from the low ground objective, but I think they're going to be too late. And that's going to be a victory for the... Wow, man, what a crazy one. That was a great game between those 2 champions. Really fun stuff. Now, taking a look at the armies, obviously, Greenskin stuff worked. Grom was very disruptive. Squigs are very good. Black Orcs, I kind of liked them in reserve, but man, oh man, they still kind of got pounded a little bit by Thorgrim, didn't they? So yeah, Thorgrim's a really good AP character, so yeah, Squigs carried that game. Now, for Platy's army, yeah, it's 3 Slayers, that's great. Yeah, and then they all did really well. So, cool stuff seeing Gyrocopters. Myself, I haven't used him too much in the matchup, but, he obviously is a stronger player than I am, so I'd be quite interested to kind of experiment with it myself. But But yeah, cool stuff. GG, well played. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that extremely close match. That was a great duel of fates. And we will see you all on the other side. There are certainly more grudges to be struck today.